Story 1. When I was around 7 years old, I was sexually exploited and had my toddler photos sold to pedophiles by a maid we hired. One afternoon, right after taking a bath, I wanted to turn on our personal computer. But as a child, I was afraid of plugs due to the electricity. So I asked her kindly to plug it in for me. But the maid then told me I should first pose for a photo on the bed. Otherwise, she wouldn't do it. So I went to my bed and posed. I had a giant stuffed teddy bear at the time, so I covered my bare body because I somehow knew it was wrong. Then she told me to take the teddy bear off. She had also taken photos of my baby brother. The other maids carefully observed her and eventually told my parents. I watched her cry and beg on her knees, kissing my parents' feet, explaining it was a joke. As a kid, I honestly was laughing. The police further investigated and found out she had been making a fortune off the photos she took of children she was hired to care for, including me. I've never told anyone, even on Reddit, because I'm afraid no one will listen, but here I am. Story 2. I have a good friend who is a very shy person when it comes to using the restroom. We've been on trips together and he won't go for days. He says he just can't relax because he's in public. But one time in college, about 6 years ago, he was extremely drunk and fell asleep while using my toilet. Most of the mess ended up outside the bowl. I got him up, cleaned him and the toilet, and put him to bed. He was blackout drunk and doesn't remember it at all. I don't have the heart to tell him. He'd be mortified. It wouldn't do anyone any good. But when he's shy about using the restroom around me, I can't help but chuckle at the irony. Story 3. My ex-husband told me one time that he did not think it was wrong for a father to be sexually intimate with his daughter, as long as she was old enough. No one will ever know why we truly divorced, because I do not think anyone would believe me. He started talking about children. I would never let my daughter be his. Story 4. I was sexually abused by my aunt from the age of 7 to 12. She recently got in a car accident and now she's paralyzed from the neck down. It sort of brings me joy that she can't harm other kids. Story 5. My family thinks I finished the computer science degree, but I dropped out. However, I've been working in the sector for about 25 years in a row without any trouble, and people, employers, and colleagues seem to think that I'm quite competent. It's not disturbing in itself, but for my parents, it was a big deal that I finished my studies. My dad passed away 3 years ago without knowing. My mom is 83, and she is still proud of me, and I hope things stay the same until she dies. Story 6. I have a serious skin picking problem. I can just sit for hours straight in front of a mirror and inspect every pore on my face, chest, and hands. It's gotten so bad that I have little scars all over my face. But I literally can't stop doing it. Story 7. I have a recurring dream that a tsunami is approaching. In almost every dream, it swallows me up and kills me, although one time I survived and rescued a small boy. Story 8. As a teenager, I accidentally set my parents' house on fire while playing with fireworks in the garage, and then staged it to look like an electrical fire, so I wouldn't get in trouble. I was regarded as the hero who put the fire out before it consumed the house, as I was home alone at the time, but really, I was the cause. They had all of the electrical work redone in the house as a precaution against another fire. I never confessed. Story 9. When I was a little kid, either 5 or 6 years old, I got in trouble for throwing a television remote at my sister. My dad is a very large and intimidating man. He stood in the doorway of my room, yelling at me. I was hysterical. He was getting angrier and angrier. He started yelling at me to take my clothes off. I took my shirt off. He told me to take my pants off too, and my underwear. I'm in the corner of my room crying, hysterical, afraid, and naked, staring up at this giant, angry, red-faced man. I stood there like that for a moment, when suddenly his anger instantly left his face, making way for shame. He dropped to one knee in the doorway and put his head in his hands and cried to himself, saying, "What am I doing? I'm a bad father." I walked over to him, still naked and crying, and said, "You're not a bad dad." I hugged him. He left. I don't know if he thinks I forgot about that day or what, but I remember it vividly. This was over 30 years ago. We've never talked about it. Story 10. My friend's younger brother took a dump in the litter box as a teenager to see what it was like. Their mom, a registered nurse, saw it and declared, "There is a human poop in the litter box." Whenever anyone brings up anything litter box related, I think of this. Story 11. I hid the remote control to the living room television for absolutely no reason at all and kept it hidden for probably a week. My dad began to have a meltdown by the 6th or 7th day, so I just put it under a random blanket on the couch where I knew he would find it. What a weird kid I was. Story 12. My best friend is actually his uncle's kid. Apparently, he confessed to it on his deathbed. The mom won't admit anything, and he can't talk to anyone else in the family about it. Story 13. A few years ago, I used to work at Home Depot at the returns desk. It was mostly very elderly people who worked alongside me in our store. I was the youngest in the team. We had a lady, Margaret, who had issues with bowel control due to her medications. She used to pass gas without even realizing she's doing it. Usually loud but harmless ones, even when she was having a normal conversation. So we got so used to her doing that, even though it was awkward in the beginning. One day we were having a team huddle and it started to smell like fresh manure, such a strong stench, and then one more with a different odor this time. The manager dismissed the team huddle, and one of the team members murmured, "My God, Margaret, what was that?" It was me. I did that, Margaret. I'm sorry. Story 14. I'm an alcoholic. No one is aware of how bad it has gotten, but I'm drinking to almost blackout daily and going to work ill every single day. I still do my job fine, but the second I'm off, it's all I want to do, and I can't stop myself anymore. It's been like this for almost 2 years now. What I'm doing to myself while acting completely fine to everyone disturbs me, but I'm really struggling to get myself help. Story 15. I brushed my sister's toothbrush over a soap bar when we were little because I thought that's what she did too. Sometimes my toothbrush tasted a little soapy. Never talked about it with anyone. First time writing it down. Story 16. All day, every day, relapsing is all I can think about. I have been clean for 3.5 months, but it is difficult. I crave the relapse. The only reason I have not is because it would hurt my boyfriend to see me relapse. Story 17. I was sexually abused from the age of 7 to 11 by a former family member. He is in jail now, but not for me coming forward, justice in some sort of way, I suppose. Story 18. I never had a girlfriend but told everyone I did have one and that she broke up with me. I was so good at lying about it that I myself believed my lie and somehow I felt really sad and depressed. Then I even remembered memories I never had. And afterwards I was like, what am I doing? Edit. Thanks, guys. The responses are really either hilarious or sympathetic. I am happy to tell that I got rid of that habit some time ago. I am now doing well, albeit single, but what do you know? Sometimes single life seems not so bad to me. Anyway, thanks for the responses. This was my first post getting so many responses. Story 19. My husband passed away a few years ago. I tell everyone how much I loved him and only talk about the good times we had and how great he was. In honesty, I hated him for every bit of the 33 years we were together. He was so mean to me, both physically and mentally, every single day. He hid it well, and in front of anyone he was okay to me, but when we were alone he was terrible. I hated him so much. I live alone now and am just finding myself. I moved to a different state and have made new friends, and everyone seems to really like me, and I even like myself now too. It's been really hard to tell myself that I am okay. I have never said any of this out loud. I feel bad that I am happy he is gone. Story 20. I had a sexual relationship with someone for months, not knowing he has a wife and a newborn baby. We're in our early 20s. I asked him if he has a girlfriend, and he said no, which was technically true because he actually has a wife. Story 21. I'm terrified of going into work, not work itself. I'm a hard worker, but I despise sitting in an office full of people I barely know, constantly being on, being evaluated in person, and pretending I enjoy not being warm and safe in my cozy home. For some of us, the pandemic was a blessing. Story 22. I regularly daydream about murdering one specific person. I go to therapy twice a month and have been doing that for 5 years. And even my therapist has no idea I have these thoughts. They're just thoughts I don't plan to act on. Story 23. How close to suicide I really am. All it's going to take is one last thing. I'm at the edge. Edit. Thank you for all the comments and messages. I'm in therapy. I still got a sane brain keeping me in check. I'll be okay. I always am. Eventually. Story 24. I'm addicted to shooting up cocaine. Mostly, and have managed to hide it from close friends and family for over 15 years. My latest stint was a year and a half. I've been clean for less than a week, but feeling hopeful this will be the last time. Now working on my alcoholism. Story 25. About a year ago, my grandfather called me and wanted to talk. He was an old man, and I don't like talking over the phone, so it always feels more like a chore than something I should do. I put it aside and didn't call him back, moving it to the back of my mind. 3 days later, I got a call from my dad. He told me that my grandfather had passed away. I hadn't called him back. He did everything he could to make sure my brother and I have a good life and a good future. He's always been so supportive. I never gave him the respect he deserved. I never understood his sacrifice. He didn't have a lot going on for him in the end, and hearing from my brother and me was a big part of his life. I didn't call him back that day, and I can't forgive myself for it. My entire family is pretty abusive except my cousin. My grandfather was a great man, and he was never abusive. I wish I had called him back. I should never have ignored him. He died a year ago when I was 13 in January. I'm now 14, almost 15, and I can't forgive myself, and I don't think I should. Story 26. I accidentally stepped barefoot into a boiling, maggot-infested raccoon corpse. It got stuck on my foot like a slipper, and I tried to shake it off. Something popped, and I got a spray of blood and excrement all over me. Then I vomited on myself and stumbled home. Story 27. A boy and I were 10 and 11 years old. He was 11. And he pressured me into having anal sex. My biggest regret ever. I remember getting the bus home afterward, feeling so disgusting and icky. Story 28. I was abused mentally, physically, and sexually from the age of around 7 to 15 years old by one person who I thought was my best friend during that time. I'm 23 now and just finally coming around to the realization of everything that happened and why I have so many mental health and trust issues now, and I'm talking about it in therapy finally. As far as I know, my abuser is living a comfortable, happy life, and the only person that knows about this is me and my therapist. Story 29. Okay, this will probably cause me some shame, but it'll get buried, so I don't know. My wife makes great biscuits and gravy, like really good. I never liked biscuits and gravy before we got married. Maybe I never had a version that was good enough. Maybe my tastes changed. All of my kids love my wife's biscuits and gravy too. She's a pretty damn good cook, so there's that. Over the years, I've had other versions of biscuits and gravy with varying affection for the taste. Some good, some plain to just flat out mid. So, again, my wife's gravy with biscuits comes out on top. Well, one day a friend of mine and his wife came over so we could all hang out. He offered to cook dinner for us. He said that he was going to make biscuits and gravy. Now, like I mentioned before, I never liked it before my wife had me try hers. So I was a bit nervous. As mentioned previously, my wife's biscuits and gravy always came out on top. When your friend comes over and cooks for you, how do you gently tell them that it's not good? Do you give them the fake sounding, "My stomach has been messed up all day," or the tried and true, "I already ate" line, "I'll eat it later"? The latter buys you enough time to let them leave before you throw it out. Anyway, my buddy's cooking, and I'm already mentally preparing my speech, going over and over in my head, so it doesn't sound forced or insincere enough. But hey, at the very least I can always just choke it down, right? Well, he finished up and had us try it. I'll be damned if it wasn't the best biscuits and gravy I've ever had in my life. Like damn, it was tasty. I had 2 plates worth. I still think of it from time to time, and while my wife's biscuits and gravy are still good, it pales in comparison to my friend's version. Every time she cooks it, I remember my friend's version and I don't say anything. Nothing at all. I'm not trying to get my ass kicked. so I hide my head in shame. Story 30. I used to not eat and basically starve myself to feel hungry just to feel something, and I had control over that aspect. I had a tough home life, being groomed by my mom and such. I have had no contact for a couple of years and never had any sort of connection, love, or emotions for family. It's still hard to feel anything, but I have an amazing fiancé. Complete classic narcissism abuse. Story 31. People in my personal life who find out that I am a professional dominatrix instantly feel free to tell me their darkest secrets. I know who is secretly gay, I know who is on steroids, I know who is kinky, I know who has erectile dysfunction. I know both men and women who were brutally sexually assaulted as children, and I even know someone who has killed a man. He was not boasting or bragging. He seemed really shaken up about it. I might be the only one he has told. So, my most disturbing secret is that I am a trauma sponge for absorbing everyone else's disturbing secrets. Story 32. I'm a child of the 80s. Rape was violent rape, and if it wasn't violent, it wasn't considered rape. After learning about coercion, intoxication, and the newer freeze trauma response, I realized I was sexually abused more than I'd like to admit. This left me a very angry person. Story 33. Not a secret necessarily, but my labia tore in 2 spots near my clitoris when I gave birth to my son. I had him at home, and my son's dad was verbally, mentally, and emotionally abusive. I had no support or help, so the stitches didn't hold. I was 22 at the time and already self-conscious about my vagina, as most women are, and my ex tormented me by telling me things like my vagina was mangled and ugly. I was in survival mode for so long. It wrecked my self-esteem. Edited to add. I have tried many times to write this out, and I always end up deleting it. But today, for some reason, it just felt right to share. And the outpouring of love and support and kindness has been overwhelming, unexpected, and beyond appreciated. Oh, and he is definitely an ex.